How's everybody doing?
Okay.
Good. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Rob, did you see the text that I sent you this week about the meeting times?
I don't believe I did. I'm on a cruise ship, so I probably didn't get it. Is it something you're able to share here?
Well, I was just reminding you of a conversation we had had a couple of years back when we were concerned about the number of people showing up on the masterminds,
About the timing, right?
the timing, right?
John.
Um, because, by making
Eight.
them at, 11 o'clock, it's the
What?
middle of the morning for the East Coast people and they're working already. And, it's just, I think it
Bam.
makes it difficult for them to join in.
I agree. It's a true dilemma though, isn't it?
It is. I mean, the thing that we had talked about, which we both understood at the time, meant more work for you, which you certainly don't need, was to, have the East Coast at 9:30 and the Western states, at 11.
So before we get started, are any lenders on the call? No lenders on yet.
Good morning, everyone. Rob, would you mind making me a co-host, please?
Hi, Donna.
Good morning.
There you go. You should now be a co-host.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Good morning.
Morning. Hi, Lisa. Hi, Terry. How you doing? Good. Nice to see you on Zoom.
You too. What are you doing later?
Oh, I have a bunch of showings.
Oh, okay.
Good
You?
morning.
Good morning, everybody. We have a light group, but that means more listings for all of you. How's that?
Yeah.
So, the perfect listing pitch in the circle of success model, and the circle of success in this business is something like this. It's disciplined prospecting, in my opinion, product knowledge, superior communication skills, open houses and marketing and follow-up systems. It's going to make you unstoppable in the game of securing well-priced listings and getting referrals from the business that you do. And is there anything better in this business than procuring well-priced listings, satisfied customers that give you referrals? I think
Nope.
I think not. That's the way to leverage. And if you love working buyers, isn't it great if buyers just come to you? And I know a lot of people are who did an open house this month in March. So Beth, how was the turnout?
Um, Not bad. I mean, I don't compared to what, I don't know, but we
I
had
mean, I mean,
like
did
10 people came,
and you did it for 2, 3 hours,
3 hours, yeah.
and you had 10 people, and how many of them do you think, in your opinion, were serious?
Three,
Two.
3 out of 10, and
well,
then
three groups. So 10 people was really five couples, and so of the five couples, three of them were serious.
And do you think they were committed to working with an agent or mixed?
Yeah, they were committed to working with an agent.
They had an agent already, so you had
No,
no.
no, one of them had an agent and they were committed to working with her. And two of them did not have an agent, and so they're, fair game for me as a lead.
So you basically got two decent leads. And what was the price point? And I'm asking you these questions for a purpose because I want everybody to understand.
740.
740. Now, to get a lead from a reputable lead source for 740,000 that actually picks up the phone and talks to you would probably be 600 to $800. You had conversations, you met them in person. Do you think that is the same, better, or worse than a portal lead?
Better.
Correct. So what I'm sharing with you, Beth, is, your expected value from just that one activity of 3 hours is at least $1,500 if you had to buy those leads, and you have better quality, correct?
Yes.
And the commission on something like that, what are you doing for your buyer agent commissions? Is it from what to what, or do you always ask the same?
Usually 2.5 to the buyer's agent.
So that's what you normally put in the buyer agency agreement, 2.5. So 2.5 of $700,000 is what, close to 20,000. So your 1,500 you'd have to pay to get those leads, and you could make $20,000. If you did 2 or 3 of those a month, you'd probably have at least one sale. Would that be fair to say on the conservative side?
Yes.
Okay. So this is why this is so critical, so important. And the ironic part is that you can't just do one part. In other words, you have to be a complete agent. Okay. You have to have all the components to do it. Okay. The conversation I just had with Beth is why listings are the ultimate leverage point. I mean, you could literally, if you put in some systems, you had some staff members and some licensed assistants, not even team members, you could hold 25 listings and still have your weekends off if you wanted. Okay, that's why listings are the ultimate leverage point. The circle of success is that business breeds business. Okay. When you start getting business, there are systems that you can use to build upon that business. And I think when I look at why do some of us fail, why as team leaders do some of our team members underperform, it's because they're skipping steps. Okay. Um, in my opinion, the foundation is going to be there's two things at the foundation. One is product knowledge and market mastery. Okay. And that doesn't just mean you having a peripheral knowledge. It means being able to explain what's going on in the market, being able to teach what's going on, not just see what's going on. And if you have this knowledge, but you don't have any system for communicating with people to build your business, to have more conversations, that discipline needs to supplement the product knowledge and confidence so that you can be the total package to have the communication skills to secure the business. Okay. So product knowledge is understanding micro markets. I'm going to go into some more detail about this, and I want to, and this sheet is attached to the email that you got with this mastermind. So understand the micro markets, absorption, pricing philosophy, how to explain dynamics simply and powerfully, how to use data to create certainty for sellers, and scripts for explaining why now and why us, right? Why is this going to happen? Okay. If you have all this knowledge and the confidence, but you don't have the communication skills, we're going to be handicapped. And, a listing opportunity or a transaction opportunity is probably worth on the low side, high fives, low sixes to $25,000-$30,000 from securing one of these transactions. And to not optimize every aspect of this is, in my opinion, it's quite frankly, it's foolish. Okay, because you're at the pinnacle, you're at the Olympic gold medal race, and if you don't have the best skills, you're leaving it on the table for somebody else to take it. Okay, so superior communication skills is confidence, not arrogance, and confidence comes from having the knowledge, right? Knowing what you're talking about, and then also having a strategy for how you're going to communicate. Okay, it's having a strategy for how you're going to communicate. Tone, pace, and presence. Is there anybody here that understands or recently really noticed that tone, intentional pauses, the delivery is so critical to securing a listing? And maybe if you're a team leader, you just do it naturally. And if you go on a appointment with a buyer or a seller with one of your team members, it's very enlightening to see the stark differences between how somebody who's uncertain or unintentional behaves compared to maybe your natural behavior. Has anybody had that recently? So I'm going to challenge you. I see Jason shaking his hand. I'm going to challenge you to just pay a little bit more attention to it when you go out next time and observe how your team member that you're trying to mentor, how they behave and how maybe they miss opportunities and how they don't allow an awkward moment of silence to be powerful for them. how to communicate without overselling, how to handle objections with calm authority, the confidence transfer technique. I mean, if you can be rattled, or if you feel that you can be rattled, do you think you're going to be rattled at an appointment? If you don't know that you're going to be in complete control before you enter it, you're probably not going to be in control. Okay. We talked a little bit about prospecting. This is where the real money is here, and this is where I think everybody should take notes or at least pay attention to this page. Okay. Confidence in structuring the listing appointment. Before I go into this, I want to maybe get some input. Is there anybody that did 6 listings or more last year that wants to just volunteer for a 1-minute conversation? All right. So Kim in St. Louis,
I didn't think
when you
you'd
go,
pick me.
I saw you there.
What's up?
So when you go on a listing appointment, are they dependent upon the client, or is it almost always the same process in your experience?
Process is always the same because it's systemized, and that's also how you follow fair housing.
So, and Kim, how many listings have you done the past year, just to give the group context?
50?
So 50, about one a
60.
week. So,
Yeah.
so you are definitely an overachiever, and we're glad to have your information shared here. But it doesn't really matter about the client. The client doesn't matter, okay? If you're worried about if the client's a jerk or if they're difficult or whatnot, you've already conceded defeat, okay? What matters is the way that you run the process. And if somebody tries to be taking control of it, having 50 listings in a year, you have a system for bringing them back into the process, correct?
Mhm.
And
Yep.
what is your, let me ask you, what is the appointment to close rate? Do you do a single step or a 2-step?
If it's a house I've seen before, I do a single step because I know it. We sold it to them. I've been there. If I haven't seen it, I'm there once, but I asked them to give me 20. Now that I've seen the home, take additional time to put together a strategy for how I think we need to proceed, and I have it to them the next business day.
Okay.
So most time I'm only there once.
So you go there once, then you communicate back, and you procure the listing without going back out.
Yeah, I mean, if I've been there before, I'm trying to get the listing while I'm there.
So if it's one that you haven't been, so you say you're going to go back and come up with a strategy. Do you actually have to go back, or you send it to them for e-signatures? How does that work?
E-signatures. E-signatures. I mean, there's some that you know the area so well that you've got an idea of what you're dealing with, but then you walk in the door and you're like, holy crap, this is so much nicer than what I thought. In the intake call, they didn't share, or maybe one of my agents was like, just got the appointment and didn't ask the questions over the phone, which, drives me nuts, but I'm like, hey, you got the appointment, so that's good enough. So, but usually we've got a pretty good idea before we walk in the door what capital improvements they've made. But occasionally I'm like, this is an absolute shanty, or this is an absolute masterpiece, and I wasn't prepared for it. So my net sheet that I go through, that just goes by the side, that gets folded and put underneath everything, and I regroup.
Now, who does net sheets? Do most people do a net sheet? Rob Durso, do you do a net sheet? Terry, do you do a net sheet?
Yes.
Rob, you
Jason,
do. Rob, you do a
Panos.
net sheet? Jason, you do a net sheet? So you
Absolutely.
go through and you show them,
Every single time. I've won listings because of net sheets.
You're probably the only one that does net sheets, right?
I've been to appointments where they actually,
go through my net.
because part of my process is I always tell the client, don't ever worry about the top line, worry about the bottom. I don't care what they offer. I can show you multiple ways to make this offer work where your bottom line is going to be better with a lower offer. You get a cash offer that has no concessions and everything's pushed on the buyer side is going to be more valuable to you than full price with concessions. I've shown that, and they go, okay, you clearly know how to work this stuff, and other people don't do it. I've won the listing.
Not only do I do a net sheet, I make them sign the net sheet.
I do
So
that with
they-
my package too.
Right, so they can't say that. Back in the day, a net sheet was required to get your commission.
Oh, that's really smart. Yeah, I find that as long as you establish up front that you're meeting the financial goals, your compensation doesn't matter. I always put on the net sheet the highest compensation I think a buyer's agent might ask for. It's usually less, but I don't care if a buyer's agent is bold and asks for a big number. As long as it meets their financial goals or exceeds it, we can make the numbers work. I mean, you're not paying that buyer's agent for writing this offer. You're paying them for the 6 months they've spent getting this qualified buyer to the closing table.
Well, and I honestly, most of the time, people don't even ask what I charge because it's on my net sheet. And then if they
Yeah,
ask,
exactly.
then the cool thing is the only question I ever get, which I think Rob's going to cover in a minute, is, well, would you consider lowering your commission? And then I already know what that response is going to be.
I'm on Rob's mastermind.
So Cindy, do you in Arizona, do you do net sheets on all, most, some?
Sorry, I was on my phone. Yes, we do net sheets. Some agents do, some don't. We always have on our team just because it really shows them the detail and then they understand where they're going to end up or a range of where they're going to end up. So the net sheet to me is key.
Okay. That's something that when I've been a co-pilot on listing appointments with most of you, I have not done, which is interesting. Maybe it's because I've never been in the practice that you have. Brenda Taylor, you do net sheets as well?
I do. They are not part of my listing presentation, but I give it to them when I'm with them because I think it was Jason who said that most of the time they don't even ask me for my commission because it's in there. Or sometimes when they say, what about your percentage or what about your commission? And I say, oh, it's already included in there. And they go, oh, okay. Because they already seen the bottom line and they already know that either it meets what their goal is or I'm giving them more than what they were thinking of.
So do you ask them to bring a copy of their mortgage statement to create the net sheet?
I usually do before my appointment, or I ask them what is their goal. I ask them what is the price that you are thinking of before I get there.
Okay. Well, obviously I'm an outlier here. So in terms of, the communication strategy and the process, sometimes if you talk too much about the money, then the money rises and becomes an issue, if that makes any sense. So put it in your arsenal and just keep it as a resource if you ever have one of those wonky situations where, sometimes talking too much might not help you, might hurt you in the process. Let me just go back to sharing my screen here because I want to go through all this content. So the structure of the listing appointment, and I think many of you had said that it's not client dependent, it's us dependent. And if you have clients that are, anxious, that tend to be difficult, there's a way that you can kind of keep them in line by, saying, hey, that's a great question. Do you mind if I come back to that a little bit later? Does anybody do that extremely well? Because, clients might try to, overtake the conversation and ask you a lot of questions. And if you say, hey, Janet, if you could just give me a minute, I'm going to come back to that a little bit later on. And, I've found that always works. And
I like doing it because it shows the client that you're organized. And it really it sets the tone for the rest of the appointment.
right, it kind of shows that it kind of shows that you're in control of the process. So without rapport and knowing their motivation, it's hard to win. Does anybody future pace in listing appointments or even know what that is? Nobody knows what future pacing is. So future pacing would be, hey, Jason, once this sells, tell me like where you're moving to. What's the motivation for
Oh,
the
I
move,
asked
right?
them the next event stuff. Yeah, okay. I didn't realize that was called future pacing, but yeah.
Yep. So you want to get them into the mindset of having the process already completed, right? Asking discovery questions like what's most important, to you when you select the person you're going to work with. Now, is that a fair question?
Yes.
Who
That's probably
who
the
asked?
second question I ask.
Okay, who asked that questions beside Jason and I? like all the time.
Hey, sometimes I'll say, so what does your life look like if this home doesn't sell?
Okay.
Especially if I think they're nuts and they've got twins on the way and they have 3 daughters and they're going to have 2 more. And like, it's just crazy. And I'm like, their marriage isn't going to survive. They don't listen to me. So, where do you see yourself? But also like, what does your life look like if this home doesn't sell? And that kind of puts into perspective of like, oh crap, everything doesn't sell.
Yep.
Maybe I had asked in a different way, but sometimes, especially when it's not the first time they have sold a house, it's not the first rodeo. Sometimes I ask them, what had been an experience or something that you have not liked in your experience in the past? And that tells me, something I should not do or what I need to avoid or something I should not even come close to,
I think Rob froze up.
I think we lost him. I'm gonna give him a call.
Well, here, since we're waiting on Rob to come back, Casey asked me a question. What's your script for responding to someone asking a lower commission? I'll be honest. I have a couple of them, but and since we're waiting for the pop to go, I'll just kind of fill the noise. Literally, I think I have a couple of them, but it depends on how it's asked and when. But my favorite one to it in general is I'll always look at them square in the eye and go, no, it's a great question. Now, just to be clear, is this part of the interview or are you actually asking? And it puts them back to, are you interviewing me or not? And I always say, well, the reason I ask that question is I imagine you're going to interview a couple other people and I encourage it. Here's the reality is that you always say that, who you hire matters and what I'm going to do for you. And if somebody is willing, do you want the agent who has the immense skill, the ability to sell your home and strong negotiating skills? Would you say that's a fair characteristic of the person you want to hire? And inherently, they're going to say yes. I said, if an agent, whether it's me or anyone else that you're willing to hire, will sit in your living room and basically give away their own value, what do you think is going to happen when you're not looking and when they're going to give away your value to somebody else? And inherently, they won't even ask anymore. They'll just move on. That's usually my script and some variation of that.
It's a very eloquent way of saying you get what you pay for, though.
That's what I try to do.
Yeah.
And I will say most of the time, they don't even bring it up. I said, look, if I'm willing to give away my value in your living room, what do you think, I would do or any agent would do if when I'm negotiating behind the scenes on your behalf? And I don't think I've ever had somebody go, well, but I still want to pay you less. It just doesn't come up.
I love your script because that's so on par. Sometimes I've just said, that's a great question. I'm not going to be able to do that, but thank you for asking. Do you have any other questions? And it just moves the F on. And they're like, because they really aren't looking to negotiate because they're not good negotiators. But somewhere along the way, they were told they should ask.
No, and honestly, I had a coach that we were talking and we were trying to come up with objection handling, and what his version was, and he was a psychologist in a different life, and he literally said, if you make them think the way you want them to think is going to be better. So my question is, are you actually asking? Is this an interview question? And if they say, well, someone told me I should ask, they want to see okay, great. I'll give you my interview answer. Or if you're literally asking, I'll turn around and do something else. So I think that honestly, what it rolls them back, I'm not answering the question. I'm literally making them think, do you really want to ask me that question? And so that way I don't even have to really answer it. At that point, I don't think it would matter what I was charging them. And that's literally why when we kind of came up with it and wrote it, it's not like I came up with it, but I took some pieces from various coaches and made that work for my presentation. Did we get Rob back?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, cool. I can keep doing this, Rob. I mean, I don't mind. I was just trying to
your horse and pony show.
No.
Oh, by the way, my last Zoom before, they're like, how big is your coffee mug? Yes, this is the soup mug. These are freshly ground espresso beans. It's been that kind of morning.
I feel that Monday morning.
Getting back to Rob's question about, do you ask it, ahead of time, once we've got your house sold, then what's next for you? I always ask that question because the answer to that question oftentimes will play into how you price their home. I had one occasion where I asked the question, and the seller said to me, "Well, we really need to sell this house quickly because we found a house down in, I think it was Virginia, that we want to make an offer on, and we would like to make an offer on it by the end of this weekend, so that we don't lose it." And I explained to them, well, we can do that. We can absolutely sell your house this weekend. Now let's talk about what kind of price we put on the house in order to achieve that. So it really came into play with their thinking, and we ended up still selling the house for more than they had expected.
Fantastic. I think one phrase I'd like everybody to write down, which I find is really powerful, and it would be, hey, Robert, if we decide to work together, that's the way like I start a lot of things because I believe homeowners think that we're out there, we're putting our name in the hat to get selected, right? And I want to change the narrative and say, Robert, if we decide to work together, tell me what's most important to you, right? Because it levels the playing field, okay? And yeah, I find I don't say this enough, but 93% of communication is nonverbal. 93% of communication is nonverbal, and we need to remember that because we can have the best damn script, but if we don't deliver it correctly, it doesn't work. Okay? So we need to handle that process by saying, "Hey, Jason, if we decide to work together, tell me what are the two most important things to you in getting the property on the market?" Okay, and it puts us on the same playing field. It makes them wonder in their subconscious, maybe Jason's going to decide that he doesn't even want to work with us, right? And how much would that be a disappointment, right? We had him come over here, we made our house look pretty, and Jason says, "No, I'm not the right agent for you." Right? And you may think that's ridiculous, but there is some threshold at which point everybody would say, "I am not going to work with you, Jason. You know, you're too unrealistic, you're too unreasonable." I remember when I went to a listing appointment. This is the last listing appointment I remember walking away from. We went to a listing appointment in Livingston, New Jersey. The house was not well kept, a lot of square footage on a busy road. And the agent's like, "Oh, I interviewed 5 agents, and this agent said that they would stage it and they would list it for 200,000 more." And I remember I kicked Sal under the table and I said, "Hey, Sal, you know what? I got to get home to my kids." And we kind of just left because that was just booking a bad listing, right? So there always is that listing that we don't want, and then there's a balance in between. So if I say, Jason, hey, let's have a conversation. At the end of the conversation, we'll decide if we're a good fit to work together. It's not a forgiven, it's not a foregone conclusion that we're going to take any listing at every price. So going into the listing discussion, if you don't have rapport, you have nothing. If you don't have rapport, you have zero, right? I don't care if you have charts, if you have graphs, if you have experience, if you sold their neighbor's house, if you can't build rapport, you're pretty much done, okay? Part of building rapport is having confidence, right? If you have a listing in your backyard compared to one 3 counties away, how much more confident are you, Kim, if you're taking a listing, in the within 5 miles of where 80% of your business is work versus one that's 45 minutes away in an area you're unfamiliar with? You're on mute.
Sorry, I got a big buyer later that I'm working on. It's just easier because I don't go 45 minutes away, but we sell a lot within 2 miles of this office and where I live. And we dominate in that area. And it's really nice to say of the top 3 sales in the community the last 2 years, we had 2 of them. And Lisa, I don't know if she's on, she's got a listing coming up and she's using that to reach out to the neighbors. They're all in 2 stories that want a ranch because there hasn't been one in 10 years, and booking listing appointments, like just taking things to the next level. And it's so much fun.
Yep. So having that confidence gives you better communication skills, And being prepared makes you more confident. Okay, so it could be where you know the market intimately, or you can simply, with technology and AI, you can educate yourself at a extremely high level in a very short period of time. For example, beyond, knowing that 93% of communication is nonverbal, knowing that you need to get into rapport before you can do anything else. If I ever go on a listing appointment with any of you, when I tour the house, okay, for the most part, it's building rapport. Okay, I could find out what's in the house without, I mean, I can't, but I mean, the real value is building rapport. And you can do things like, Jason, when you're walking through the house, you could say, "Do you mind if I just take some notes so that I have everything accurate when we put the listing up?" Right? And if you go to, in New Jersey, we have these things called basements. I think you might have them in St. Louis, but not in Florida. You go to the utility room and you take note, hey, what's the amp service? How old is the air handler, right? You say, "Do you mind if I just take some notes?" And it does a couple of things. It enhances rapport. It's permission based, right? And it shows that you're paying attention. So by the time that you get to the dining room or the kitchen table, okay, you're already almost like best friends because you've built rapport. And it's not fake, it's not unauthentic. It's like you're being the best version of yourself. And you can do that because you've done your homework and you're prepared. Things that you might want to talk to people about is, hey, I wanted to just share with you how, inventory is trending in the area. I want to just talk to you big picture before you get into the particulars of launching their house. So I would have this prepared. And if nothing else, I would say, hey, inventory, months of inventory is trending up or down. I looked this up in Parsippany, and you can, in 2 seconds you can download this report. Those of us in New Jersey are pretty familiar. And I purposely did it a month back because you can see, if you look at like 1 month, the median sales price for a single family home in the month of December was up 34.7%. Now, is that possible, Mr. Garver? No, it's not possible, right?
It's
The
not
price
possible.
didn't go up 30. But if you look at it for the period of 12 months, it's up 2.4%. Is that possible?
Yes.
So you need to have an understanding of all the information, right? Because there could be one or two high sales that can skew the numbers. You want to take a look at what's happening with new listings. It went from 20 to 15. Closed sales went from 25 to 17. Days on market went from 24 to 42. That's a big jump. So I would be educating them and saying, hey, like, here's what's happening with the weather. We have sunlight, chance of rain later, the wind is blowing northeast. These are all the things that we're talking about here to a potential homeowner that's going to list with us. Builds confidence, builds rapport, and it gives them valuable information. If you were to say, hey, the average list to sales price is down 3.8% from 105.4 to 101.4. Wouldn't that be helpful to know? And
Absolutely.
I think sellers are curious by that because that's not on Zillow. It doesn't show them that. You can talk to them, what really moves markets. Most agents show up at a listing appointment with a singular opinion of value. Say, hey, Robert, your house is worth $650,000. And when you say that, what do most sellers say? Anybody?
My house is worth more.
Yeah,
Worth more.
I think if there's one universal thing across all of the markets that we're in, is sellers always have a emotional opinion of value on what their house is worth. They have an emotional opinion of value. And when you go to a listing appointment, Kim, how do you approach price? Do you say, hey, it looks like your house is worth, what's the average sales price that you in your market?
Average in the immediate area is around 300. Ours is in the low to mid fours. We actually have started embracing a little bit of your approach. And I don't know if Lisa's on, should be great to talk about it, but we kind of, we take bracket pricing and put it into like, hey, we can come in lower in the market and auction this off. We can come in and this higher price point, you're going to see days on market are going to be here. You know, that's if we're guessing, but most of the time it's like, look, here's about the range where you need to position it. The market sets the value. It's always changing. It's up to you to determine the asking price. And we're going to make sure you have the best information to make an informed, good decision. Because 10 days, 3 to 5 showings, we're going to know if there's market rejection. And at that point, we're going to reduce by 5%. And they go, okay, most of the time. Did that answer your question? And I have to bump off in just a second.
Hey,
Yeah.
let me say this before she jumps off. I just got to hear Kim speak at CRS about a week and a half ago,
Oh,
and
you
her
were there?
I was in the back of the room with you and Alexis.
Oh,
I
God,
have
that
to
was
say
that
that
was so fun.
it was probably the second, the top 2 or 3 presentations of all of CRS. It was
Oh,
excellent.
we were a hot mess too. It was fun though.
I was
Yeah, it
there
was a lot of
too.
yeah. And you got to jump off.
I'm going to jump off it real quickly. There is a CRS Remax group. If you're not in it on Facebook, there's about 700 people in there. They did a thing yesterday. Colleen Collier out of Buffalo, myself, and somebody else out of Olympia, Washington, just kind of shared a little bit about celebration. I loaded the PowerPoint slide for my other presentation, but if you're not in there, join. I think they're going to start doing a monthly mastermind of Remax and CRS agents. So if you have your CRS designation, pop on that group.
And I will say 100% if you need to know conferences to go to, I always say R4 is at the top of your list, luxury if you can go, but CRS is by far the best out of network conference you can attend.
Yeah.
Or with the best of the best.
And I'm an instructor, so I'm kind of biased.
From just a mom and pop already from CRS. So
cool. All right, guys, have a great weekend. Happy Easter, happy Passover.
Yep.
Bye.
Same to you.
Hey, can
All right.
I'm trying to get a listing that is a referral from Ann Varkey, and she's a top agent. And I've been communicating with this woman. She finally answered back and she said, please send me your LinkedIn profile and sales summary from 2025 and 2026. Would you do that?
Sure.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't if it's not impressive, but I would absolutely send it. I mean,
it's solid. I don't know. The where I'm vulnerable is this listing is in a neighborhood where I haven't sold.
Hey, Beth, question.
Very much.
Do any of your team members sold in that area? Because when I had an agent in New Jersey when the seller asked for their sales track, I told her to use mine as well, just so that we are a team at the end of the day. And if anyone in your office have sold in that neighborhood, you should say we have. You don't have to say I sold it. We can say me and my team have sold in this area. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, I was trying to think of that angle. My team really hasn't, but obviously if I look at the whole Dr. Phillips office and Celebration together, we have a lot of sales there. So
yeah, that's how I would do it. I would just say my team and I have sold in here. Here's the following properties.
All right, that's good. That's a good idea.
All right. Rob, you're back?
I'm back. I'm back and I'm mobile. I'm moving everywhere to get better internet. So, in terms of like the communication strategy, I find that here's another nugget that I would always use, as I would say that the way the industry evaluates homes, the perceived market value or the market value of your home would be X. So this way, it's not a personal attack on you. Okay, does anybody ever feel like when you share with somebody the market value of their house, especially if you say, I've done the research and the value of your home or the market value of your home is X, that they may direct and channel some of that disappointment to us? I think everybody would say yes, right? But if you distance yourself, just like I say, if we decide to work together, whenever I do a lot of stuff, is I'd say if we decide to work together, we need to decide how we're going to launch it. We need to decide the price. When I talk about value, I would say, Jason, the way that the industry evaluates homes is they look at the comps and the market value or the perceived market value of your home is 640,000. And I have a dramatic pause to say the good news is, Jason, that does not mean it's what it's going to sell for. right? But I don't say it right away because I want to get them to be a little bit anxious, right? Because they're thinking it's worth 7.25. And I say the way the industry values homes, if you were to hire an appraiser, the market value or the perceived market value is 640, right? And they might be like, well, that's it. Oh, don't worry. That doesn't mean it's what it's going to sell for. I'm going to go through few different strategies on how we could launch your home. And then if we decide to work together, it's going to be your choice to decide how to launch the property, how to kick it off. Okay. Do people want to have more options? Yes or no? Or should I say, Glenn, from our seminar, do people want to have more options? Yes or yes? And the answer is yes. So giving them options and showing them how they perform is valuable, right? And what's the biggest mistakes sellers make besides not hiring you?
Overpricing.
What's the single biggest? Is there anyone that thinks that there's a different mistake besides overpricing that's the biggest mistake they can make?
That is the biggest mistake. It doesn't matter who you hire if you overprice the home.
Correct. So that's the single biggest mistake that you can make is overpricing the house. Yet sometimes we do that because we want to secure the listing. Okay, because we have commission breath or desperation. What normally happens is the seller has a emotional value, that's what I'm going to call it, emotional value of their home, which is not a market base because it's their house. My house is worth 725. Jason just told me it's worth 640. That can get wonky if it's a personal thing. If Jason goes there and says, "Hey Rob, your house is worth 640 like you're God, like you know that for sure." That makes it very awkward, confrontational. You can get out of rapport really quickly. Has anybody ever had that happen? Where you say, "I think your value is this," and then the conversation starts to go sideways? Yes or no? All right, I'm going to say we have a shy group here, but it often happens where you say, "I think your value of your home is this," then they channel their disappointment to us, which I never want to do. I want to say, "Hey, the way the industry values it, if you had 10 competent professionals here and 5 appraisers, it would come in within a 5,000 plus or minus a 640." I'm going to pause and wait for them to be like, "Oh my God, that's it." And then I'd say, "Hey, the good news is that doesn't mean it's what it's going to sell for." If we decide that we're a good fit to work together, I want to share with you a few different options. Would that be helpful for you? Everybody wants options. And then I say, would it be helpful for you furthermore, Jason, if I shared with you how other sellers in the neighborhood had fared using these 3 options, right? So you can run the analysis and then share that back with them. And it's not a personal attack. It's not like they're personally offended or they think I don't believe in their home. If you tell them it's not what it's worth, I can tell you I've been on appointments where sellers like, "Oh, you don't see the value in my house? Like maybe I need to find a different agent," right? You don't believe in it. And you never want to have that happen either. So you share with them the options, you share with them how they perform. And I'll give everybody a news flash. Like, when you're not looking at the exact same house and the exact same strategy because that's not possible to do. But if you bundle homes that sold in whether it's under 15 days or 45 days, depending upon where the market breaks, you're always going to see homes that sell quicker that are priced right, selling at a premium to the other ones. Especially, if some MLSs have square footage listed, you'll probably see the price per square foot is elevated. You'll see the total price is generally elevated. And it's inversely related. The more days on market, the lower the price. So you build up days on market, lower the price is without exception. Okay. And do sellers, in your opinion, do you ever see a seller that crosses their arms and says, "Hey, Adona, I'm in no hurry to sell my house. I can wait for the perfect buyer"? Do we ever see that?
Some
Absolutely.
version of it.
Absolutely. No
Right.
rush.
Just had it happen.
So how did you address that, Beth? Because that's a real question.
Well, what happened is I am the second agent on this listing that's been on the market a long time. And she gets an offer, and it's not an awesome offer, but it's not a bad offer. And that's what she said. "I don't need to sell. I can afford to carry it." I don't know. I mean, it ended up we lost it. We lost the offer. And I still am not sure I handled it correctly. I mean, I tried to point out how much the house was costing her every month and that it wouldn't take long if she holds on to it to make up the difference between what she had hoped to get and what this offer was. And I also said, this is the first offer you've gotten. We don't have a crystal ball to know whether we'll get another one. Usually your first offer is your best offer. But we lost it
So
because
what
she
would
said, I
what
can
would
afford to hold it.
no, what would
Rob,
happen
but
if you
But
go ahead?
also, the same seller that is telling you that they are not in a hurry to sell is the same seller that weeks later is pushing you and is putting the pressure on you. Why you are not bringing me an offer? What is wrong with you? That is the worst seller more than the one that was in a hurry to sell.
Do you
I
have a
mean,
Beth,
that's
secret
funny
camera
how
in
it
my
works.
house? Yeah.
so Beth, let me ask you this question. So in this particular case, you get the offer and the seller, so was it her?
Yeah.
You call her up and you say, we have an offer of, just
It
role
was
play with me.
it was 620. We have an offer. I think I said something like, we have an offer. It's not exactly where you want to be, but it's a solid offer with solid buyers, well vetted. Um, I forget all the things I said, but that is all true. I mean, they were solid buyers and they would have closed. They were the parents of the buyer's agent.
What was the asking price at this point?
650, and this offer was 620. So
Okay.
then they countered at 625.
How about
She
trying to meet in
countered
the middle?
she
Wait,
countered at 630. They countered at 625. And uh she wouldn't uh, I don't even know if I want to rehash it. I was
so Beth, can I tell you something without
You
like
can tell me anything.
I don't want to rub salt, but I think like
Sure.
the way that we set this up has a tremendous impact on how it goes, and you're just reporting the news. You're not, kind of getting the buy-in, right? Um, if there's a 625 and a 630, does everybody agree that that should not be lost over $5,000, right?
Mhm.
And I think part of it is the communication strategy into how you go about it and say, Beth, if we turn this down for 625, that's the top that they're going to go, and they have beautiful terms. Okay. What do you think what do you think buyers are going to do when we build up another 2 to 3 weeks on the market? Do you think we're likely to see higher or lower offers? Right. And you can kind of coach the seller into getting them to where they understand what's happening by getting them to share that with us.
Well, she also felt like the escrow deposit wasn't high enough, and she felt like the agent, he is a newer agent. His offer paperwork wasn't perfect. I mean, it wasn't, but it was good enough. So
So
it
at that
picked
point,
all that and felt like, and she wanted to reduce his commission to 1%. And that, of course, made his parents mad. And that could be part of the reason. Uh, I I think I said that to her, but maybe I didn't say it well enough because
so
I blame myself that this deal fell apart because it sure seems like it shouldn't have.
right.
I know things made a mistake.
So when she countered at 630, I would say, look, if we counter at 630, I would hope that either A, they'd accept it or we could meet them in the middle. How does that sound? And I would set the stage beforehand.
Yeah.
And also, it sounds like this woman kind of has you a little bit frustrated. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say.
And I want to say this with love that the frustration comes, even when you talk about it, the frustration comes out in your voice.
Sure.
And that's not calming to get us to where we need to be, right?
Right.
And if you were to say, hey, you know what, let's talk about this, how long has it been on the market now since you took it?
60 days.
So it's been on the market 60 days. I would say most homes, Beth, most homes that have been on the market for 60 days are selling for between, a 4.9 to 17% discount to the list price. So this one happens to be a pretty reasonable offer. If we counter at 630, they might accept it. If they don't accept it, I just want to prepare you. Maybe we can still get an extra 5,000 by getting them up to 625, right? And, how does she know that the agent's not experienced?
I think I told her because she brought up that the offer looked sloppy, that he didn't check a lot of boxes and so forth. And I think I said, well, I think he's only, I think he's fairly new and that could be, so maybe that was a
Right. So,
mistake.
so, so I would, so, but I would say, look at, if it's a newer agent, look at what we can use to our advantage is that he's dependent upon me to help him navigate through the process, and I can help him close this because Beth, I can tell you, this down payment and these terms with no contingencies is a good offer, right? And the tone that you use can influence, not can, it will influence the outcome of the process. I just want to go through the rest. We have 6 minutes left, but
Great.
tone.
That's good advice, Rob. Also, one thing is, and she's young, but she talks a lot. It's hard to get overcome her objections in between her talking. But anyway,
So what I would do, Beth, is I would wait for her to finish. I'd say, can I share with you my perspective, right? And of course she's going to say yes. And I would say, although I know it's not the number that you wanted, let's talk about the other attributes of the offer, right? And then
yeah,
when she made the counter at 630, I would have a conversation saying, look, with this offer, either A, they can accept it, or B, they could completely reject it and go away, or maybe we can meet in the middle. I just wanted to set that expectation.
I
I
like
would
that.
say that based upon what homes that have been on the market for 60 days are selling for, if we're able to get them to meet us in the middle, that would be a home run. And I would have it with that calming, soothing tonality. And I would talk to them about like, have the showings been slow?
Yes,
I would say, look at, Beth, because the showing activity has been very slow, I would really emphasize, let's be strategic with this so that we can maximize what we can get from this particular buyer, right? Because as we build up days on the market, and I would show them as days on the market increase, once we pass that 90-day mark, it's usually about a 5 to 7% additional decrease in price, which in your case would be over 30,000 less. And I would ask questions that drive them to that conclusion. I would educate people on, hey, a lot of people want to know if it's a buyer's or a seller's market. In Parsippany, there's 3.5 months inventory. A balanced market is 4. So it's probably slightly a seller's market, but it's trending towards a buyer's market. We saw the list to sales price drop by 3%. We saw the days on market increase from 24 to 42. These are things I would be talking to sellers about when I put it on the market I don't want them to see me having a vested interest in it. I'm just reporting the news. I'm just sharing with them what's happening in the marketplace. Um, days on market going up or down, under 20 days is a seller's market. If you'd like to get the best price, where do you think we need to be? Um, uh, Absorption. Like I would just casually mention this stuff because it's impressive. I wouldn't go into too much detail. The realtor associations do a great job at making this information available to us with the click of a switch. I know it's available in Florida and New Jersey. I guess it's available in most states. Discussing the pricing strategy and the way I would always deploy this is, Beth, if we decide to work together, there are 3 distinct options that you have as a seller. One of them is to put it at the perceived market value. I'll share with you how sellers have done. Another one is to intentionally price it attractively to get multiple offers and sell it quickly. And the third is to price it aggressively or lottery style and have the expectation that if you don't win the lottery, that we're going to have to lower the price. Would you be interested in seeing how other homeowners fared in Celebration? And every time I ask that, everybody's always interested. Set expectations. Ask questions like, assuming that you hired the most qualified agent and you didn't get an acceptable offer at 650, how long would you wait before you reposition the home? Okay, if you asked this woman before you took the listing, right? Not if you hire me, assuming you hired the most qualified agent and you don't get an acceptable offer, how long do you wait before you reposition the home? Is that not a fair question for every potential home seller? And I am diverting it for me because she can't direct at me. Hey, I'm not even saying that we haven't decided yet whether, we're a good fit to work together, whether I'm the right agent for you, but I'm just asking the question, right? And then what price would you adjust it to be? Okay. And then you go, hey, if the house has been on the market for 30 days and we just cut the price 20,000, what would you expect the first offer to be? And let her tell you that, oh, I'm sure they're going to make it low because they see that it's been on the market for a period of time and nobody's made an offer, and use their momentum to our advantage. Okay. Um, I would say I would have them write this down and say, hey, Beth, we have a 10-10-0 rule to protect the equity in your home. I would like you to just write this down, right? And the 10-10 rule is if we have 10 days with no showings, that the market's sending us a message that we need to reposition it. If we have 10 showings and no offers, that means that it's attractive but not compelling. We have another conversation to have. So if it's 10 days with no showings, okay, that usually means that it's that 5 to 7% repositioning price wise. And if it's 10 showings with no offers, it's a 3 to 5% repositioning to solicit offers. I just wanted to let you give you that information so that you can write it down to protect the equity in your home and avoid accumulating days on market. The illusion of choice. Okay, the illusion of choice is, Beth, when would you have all the pre-listing work done? When would you have the stain in the bathroom painted and the tile repaired so that we could put this on the market, right? When I ask the question that way, they might say, well, we already have the painter coming out on Saturday and the person to fix the tiles coming out on Tuesday. And then I'd be like, so would Wednesday be a good day to get the photographer here, and maybe we could try to launch it on Thursday? And then you're not even saying, will you pick me, right? It's just like the natural progression from that conversation. Does that make sense? Because if you ask for a listing, what can happen? Two things, right? They could say yes or no, right? Or defer. It's like when I'm out, door knocking. Okay, this is another example. If I say, Beth, can I have your phone number? You could say yes or no. If I say instead, I say, Beth, what's the best number to reach you at? Then you just give me your phone number because that's the logical answer. Okay, it might not work 100% of the time, but it works a lot better than saying, can I have your number, right? So the presumptive close, the illusion of choice is incredibly powerful, right? And then you just say something like, you were making the next step obvious, which is listing with us, and say, hey, Beth, my fee is 3%. Now what we need to do is decide how we're going to compensate the agent that brings us the buyer. Intentional pause. Hey, I recommend that we advise buyers agents to put their requested compensation with the offer and tell them that we'll evaluate the complete offer, price, terms, and buyer's agent fees at the same time. How does that sound? Right? And I think if you put that out and say, hey, my fee is 3, or if you charge 3.5, you just say, my fee is this. Now we need to decide how we're going to compensate the other agent. It gives them choice, but not choice with ours. And it's probably the 98-2 rule. 98% of the time, people are going to be okay with it. 2% of the time, you're going to lose. There's nothing you can do that's going to make a difference. But those are pretty darn good odds, okay? And then, exploiting, like getting a listing is like getting another listing. Once you get a listing and you promote it correctly, you do all the right activities, it's going to get another listing. Okay. If you don't do all the right activities, it will not. And you can get a buyer out of it through, Beth had 3 buyers. 2 of them are possible, or one of them is possible, and it's $700,000 buyers. This is a real home run. This is the flywheel of doing this business right. Okay. And this is how you can take one listing and catapult it into another one. Okay. This is how Kim does 50 listings a year in her neighborhood. And I think everybody should focus on doing this and, being extremely intentional in the way that you talk to people, be extremely structured in the way that you host the meeting. And I don't mean structured to the point where you're like, difficult with them. You're so rigid, but you're structured in that you do it the same way every time. You say, "Hey, Beth, that's a great question. Do you mind if I come back to that a little bit later?" And then you regain control of that whole process. And Beth, with offers when they come in like that, setting the stage for offers and how you're going to handle them at the listing appointment is also incredibly powerful,
Yeah.
right? Because if you use
Yeah,
this,
I think that's definitely an improvement I can make on my very next listing appointment.
yeah, and if you put all this together, and if I'm across the kitchen table or dining room table from you, Beth, and you think I'm just there to make a commission, you have a certain perception, and I put out like unspoken words. But if you know that I'm not here just to make the commission, I'm here to do the best possible job to maximize the equity in your home. And I want to do that so that you go out of your way to recommend me to others, not for my benefit, because you care about the people that you're recommending. Okay, that's a big shift. Okay, I'm not here. I'm not a transactional agent. I'm a relationship agent. Okay, if you think I'm here just to make this commission, um, that's not what I'm here for. I'm here for getting the job done. I'm here to exceed your expectations. And, I'm not saying this, but you're feeling it. I'm here so that you go out of your way to refer me because I did more than I was paid for. You probably want to pay me 7%, but don't worry, I won't accept it. Okay. So, follow-up systems. I mean, the money is in the appointment. It's in setting the expectations. It's the tonality. It's the practice. It's knowing that every seller is always going to try to overprice their home because they have an emotional value of their home. They don't have a market value of their home. Knowing that if I say, in my estimation, your home is worth this, then it becomes personal. If I say, hey, if you were to hire an appraiser or the way the industry evaluates home, the market value or perceived market value of home is X, right? And sometimes we're afraid to say that because we know we're going to disappoint them. But I do that on purpose. It's at X. And then they're like, oh, that's it. Don't worry about that. It doesn't mean it's what it's going to sell for. And then it's like the emotional roller coaster. They kind of come back and say, would you be interested in seeing 3 distinct strategies to launching your home? Everybody says yes. Would you also be interested to see how other neighbors have performed by deploying those 3 strategies? 100% of people say yes, right? Then you say, if we decide to work together, Bill Sheehy, what strategy, what price would you like to use if we decide to work together?
I'd like to use the market price.
Fantastic. Well, so then the next step is we need to decide how we're going to compensate the agent that brings us the buyer, right? I didn't even ask for the listing. I asked you if we decide to work together, you pick the price, and they say, all right, great. The next step is, my fee is 3% or 3.5%. We need to decide how do we compensate the agent that brings us the buyer. It's just so natural and it just flows. So I'm gonna drop it on and leave this meeting on this note, and I'm gonna say next week is going to be the proprietary buyer program, okay, where we're not going to have to, grovel to get buyers to sign a buyer agency agreement. Okay, they're going to want to sign a buyer agency agreement. And here's a clue. They would probably even pay us to sign it if we built it into the script. Say, look, I charge a $500 retainer or a $500 fee, and here's how it works. And I will bet that 2 out of 3 of your serious buyer appointments, I would be able to get them to pay that. Okay, I'm not saying we're doing that, but I would be able to get them to do that because that's the power of the conversation. All right. So everybody have a great weekend. I apologize for the spotty internet. I did the best I could, and see you all next week. Have a productive
Thank
weekend.
you. Happy
Happy
Easter.
Easter.
Yeah,
Happy
happy Easter. Bye bye,
Bye,
everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.